The ice cracked like thunder across the Antarctic wasteland. Dr. Sarah Chen felt the ground shake beneath her boots as she stood outside the research station. She had been studying climate patterns for 3 years in this frozen hell. But nothing had prepared her for this moment. What was that? Her assistant Jake called from inside the prefab building. Sarah pulled her goggles down and squinted at the horizon. A massive plume of steam rose from behind the ice ridge about 2 miles away. The morning sun made it glow like a golden tower reaching into the gray sky. "Get the rover," she said. "We need to check that out." The drive across the ice took 30 minutes. Sarah gripped the dashboard as Jake navigated around crevasses and ice chunks. The closer they got, the more her heart pounded. The steam plume was enormous and she could smell something metallic in the air. They crested the ridge and both of them gasped. A ship lay buried in the ice. Not a human ship. This thing was huge, maybe 1,000 feet long, with curves and angles that hurt to look at. The hull was dark silver and seemed to shift color when Sarah moved her head. Parts of it glowed with a soft blue light. "Holy shit," Jake whispered. "Language," Sarah said automatically, but she was thinking the same thing. Steam poured from gaps in the ice around the ship. The heat from the crash had melted tons of frozen water. Sarah could see that the vessel had hit hard. One side was crumpled, and strange fluid leaked from several spots. Is that an alien ship?" Jake asked. Sarah nodded slowly. She was a scientist. She dealt in facts, and the fact was that no human technology looked like this. Inside the ship, Commander Thex-9 struggled to his feet. His blue blood dripped from a cut on his forehead. The bridge of the Void Whisper was a mess. Sparks flew from broken control panels. 3 of his crew members lay unconscious. "Status report," he growled in his native language. Lieutenant Kex-4 pulled herself up from behind a fallen beam. "Sir, the exotic matter drive is destroyed. Life support is failing. Our quantum weapons are offline." Thex-9 cursed. The Void Whisper was a Zephyrian Empire reconnaissance vessel, built for deep space missions. But they had pushed the engines too hard, fleeing that asteroid field, and now they were stranded on this primitive world. "What about repairs?" he asked. "Impossible, sir. The biometal hull needs our home atmosphere to heal itself. This planet's air is all wrong. Too much oxygen, not enough methane." Thex-9 looked at the main screen. It showed the frozen landscape outside. He had read the reports about this world. The dominant species had not even achieved faster than light travel. They were barely more advanced than animals. "How long until the rescue beacon reaches command?" he asked. 87 years, sir." Thex-9 made his decision quickly. The Zephyrians were a practical people. They did not waste time on lost causes. "Prepare the escape pods. We abandon ship, sir." Kex-4 looked shocked. "The Void Whisper contains advanced technology. If the primitives find it—" "Look around, Lieutenant. The ship is dying. The biometal will go dormant without proper atmosphere. The weapon systems are fried. The engines are scrap." Thex-9 walked to the escape pod bay. "Let the primitives have it. They will never understand how it works." 20 minutes later, 5 escape pods shot up from the crashed ship. They streaked across Earth's sky like falling stars in reverse, heading for the nearest Zephyrian outpost 3 star systems away. Sarah and Jake set up their equipment in the shadow of the alien ship. Sarah's hands shook as she took readings with her instruments. The metal was unlike anything in Earth's periodic table. The temperature readings made no sense. Parts of the ship were hot, parts were cold, and some sections seemed to have no temperature at all. "We need to call this in," Jake said. "To who? The government? The military?" Sarah shook her head. "They'll just lock it away and classify everything." "Sarah, this is first contact. This changes everything." She knew he was right, but she also knew how bureaucrats worked. They would bring in the wrong people who would see the ship as a weapon or a threat instead of an opportunity to learn. "We document everything first," she said. "Every measurement, every photo, then we call it in." They spent 6 hours taking pictures and measurements. The ship seemed completely dead. No energy signatures, no response to their radio calls, no lights except for a few panels that glowed with their own inner light. By evening, more people had arrived. News traveled fast in the small community of Antarctic researchers. Dr. Peterson from the geology station, Maria Santos from the weather team, even old Bill Crawford who ran the supply depot. "Damn thing's bigger up close," Bill said, running, his hand along the hull. Sarah noticed something strange. Where Bill touched the metal, it seemed to shimmer for just a moment, like it was reacting to his presence. "Don't touch it," she said quickly. "Why not? It's dead, isn't it?" Sarah was not sure. The ship looked dead, but she had spent enough time around advanced technology to know that appearances could be deceiving. 3 days later, the government teams arrived. Black helicopters, men in suits, scientists with security clearances higher than God. They set up a perimeter and started treating the crash site like a crime scene. Dr. Richard Hayes led the government team. He was a thin man with gray hair and cold eyes. He dismissed Sarah's research with a wave of his hand. "Amateur hour is over, Dr. Chen. This is a matter of national security now." Sarah watched them work for 2 weeks. They brought in every piece of high-tech equipment they could think of. Electron microscopes, X-ray machines, computer analysis systems. They cut samples from the hull and ran them through every test known to science. The results were always the same, inconclusive. "The metal appears to be some kind of programmable matter," Hayes told his superiors in a briefing Sarah overheard. "But it's completely inert, dead. We can't even scratch it with diamond-tipped tools, but it won't respond to any form of energy we apply to it." "What about the interior?" someone asked. "Sealed tight. The hull seems to have fused solid when the ship died. We'd need nuclear weapons to break it open, and even then..." Hayes shrugged. "The technology inside is probably beyond our understanding. Anyway, after 6 months of study, the official report was filed. The alien vessel was classified as technologically advanced but non-functional. It posed no immediate threat and offered no immediate benefit. The crash site was designated a restricted area and mostly forgotten. Most of the government team packed up and left. A few guards remained to keep tourists away, but they were bored and lazy. The ship sat in the ice like a metal mountain, slowly becoming covered with snow. But Sarah never forgot. She had seen the way the metal reacted to Bill's touch. She had noticed how her instruments gave different readings depending on who was operating them. The ship might be dead, but she did not think it was completely gone. Late at night, in her lab back at the university, she studied the data she had collected. There were patterns in the metal's structure, relationships between its components that almost looked like programming. The Zephyrians had been wrong about one thing. The ship was not worthless. It just needed the right touch to wake it up, and Sarah Chen was determined to find out what that touch might be. She began making plans to return to Antarctica. This time, she would not be looking at the ship as a piece of dead technology. She would approach it as a sleeping giant that just needed someone to figure out how to wake it up. The aliens had given up too easily. But humans, Sarah thought with a smile, were too stubborn to know when to quit. Sarah Chen returned to Antarctica 18 months after the crash. This time she brought friends. Marcus Rodriguez was a mechanic from Detroit who had worked on everything from motorcycles to space shuttles. He had rough hands and spoke with a thick accent, but his eyes lit up when he saw mechanical puzzles that others had given up on. Yuki Tanaka was 19 years old and had already been kicked out of 3 universities for hacking their computer systems. She carried more processing power in her backpack than most government agencies had in their entire buildings. Dr. Amara Okafor was a materials engineer from Nigeria who specialized in adaptive metals. She had published papers on self-healing materials that most people thought were science fiction. And there was Bill Crawford, the supply depot manager who had never left Antarctica but knew how to make anything work with duct tape, wire, and pure stubbornness. "You sure about this, Doc?" Bill asked as they approached the crash site. "The government boys said this thing was dead as a doornail." "Government boys say a lot of things," Sarah replied. She pulled out her tablet and showed them the data she had been analyzing for over a year. "Look at these molecular patterns. This metal is not just dead, it is waiting." The ship looked different now. Snow covered most of it, making it look like a natural part of the landscape. But when Marcus brushed the snow away, the metal underneath was exactly the same as the day it crashed. No rust, no corrosion, he said admiringly. This stuff is amazing. Yuki plugged her computers into a small panel near what looked like an airlock. Her fingers flew over the keyboard. There are electromagnetic signatures all through this thing. Faint, but they are there. It is like a computer in sleep mode. Can you wake it up? Sarah asked. Maybe. Give me some time. Dr. Okafor ran her hands along the hull, feeling its texture. This biometal the reports mentioned, I think I understand now. It is not just metal. It is more like a living tissue made of metal, and living things respond to their environment. The Zephyrian said it needed their home atmosphere, Sarah said. Maybe, but maybe it just needs the right chemical stimulus. Any complex chemical stimulus. Amara pulled out a small device and sprayed something on the hull. This is a mixture of organic compounds. Let us see what happens. For a moment, nothing changed. Then slowly the metal began to shift color. Just slightly, like oil on water. Holy shit, Bill whispered. It is responding, Marcus said, pressing his palm against the hull. I can feel it warming up. Over the next 3 months, they worked 12 hours a day. The government guards had been reduced to just 2 men who spent most of their time in their heated trailer playing cards. They barely noticed the small team working around the ship. Yuki was the first to make a real breakthrough. She discovered that the ship's systems were not actually dead. They were just running on such low power that human instruments could barely detect them. It is like a hibernating animal, she explained to the others. All the basic functions are still working, just very, very slowly. She rigged up a series of small generators and began feeding power into what she thought might be control systems. The results were immediate. Lights began flickering inside the ship, and sections of the hull started warming up. Marcus found a way to open an airlock. It took him 6 weeks of trial and error, using everything from crowbars to electromagnets, but finally, the heavy door slid open with a soft hiss. The interior of the ship was like nothing any human had ever seen. The corridors curved in impossible ways. The walls were covered with panels that looked like living skin. Strange symbols glowed softly in the air itself. This is not just advanced technology, Dr. Okafor said in wonder. This is art. But much of it was broken. The crash had damaged systems throughout the ship. Conduits had ruptured, spilling strange fluids across the floor. Control panels were cracked and dark. The good news, Marcus said after a week of exploration, is that this thing is modular. Each system is separate. We might not be able to fix everything, but we can work on one piece at a time. The bad news? Sarah asked. The bad news is that I have no idea how any of this works. That was when Bill surprised everyone. You know, the old man said, scratching his beard. I have been looking at this engine room, and it reminds me of my old diesel generator back at the depot. The layout is different, but the principle looks the same. You got your power source, your distribution system, your control circuits. Marcus stared at him. You think we can understand this? Hell, boy. A machine is a machine. Does not matter if it was built by little green men or the Ford Motor Company. You gotta figure out what each part does, then you gotta make them work together. And slowly, incredibly, they did. They could not repair the exotic matter drive. That technology was completely beyond human understanding. But Marcus figured out how to remove it and install a fusion reactor of human design in its place. They could not fix the quantum weapons, but they discovered that the ship's targeting systems could be adapted to work with kinetic railguns built from Earth materials. Dr. Okafor made the biggest breakthrough of all. She discovered that the biometal hull was not just reacting to Earth's atmosphere, it was adapting to it. The longer it was exposed to oxygen and nitrogen instead of methane and ammonia, the stronger it became. The Zephyrians were wrong, she told the others excitedly. They thought the biometal needed their specific atmosphere to function, but it does not need their atmosphere. It needs any atmosphere complex enough to provide the right chemical reactions. Earth's atmosphere is actually richer in some ways than theirs. You mean the hull is getting better? Sarah asked. Better, stronger, more responsive. And I think it is learning from us. Yuki had been monitoring the ship's computer systems. She had managed to access some of the data storage, though most of it was in Zephyrian languages they could not read. There are personality imprints in these systems, she said. The ship was not just controlled by computers, it was controlled by the minds of its crew. And now it is starting to respond to our minds instead. What does that mean? Marcus asked. It means the ship is becoming human. They worked for 2 more years. Piece by piece, system by system, they rebuilt the alien vessel with human technology and human thinking. The fusion drives were less elegant than the original exotic matter engines, but they were more reliable and easier to maintain. The kinetic weapons were cruder than quantum energy beams, but they were more powerful and did not require exotic materials to operate. Most importantly, the biometal hull had adapted completely to Earth conditions. It could now repair itself using materials from Earth's atmosphere. It could reshape itself based on the needs of its human crew. It could even generate new structures that had never existed in the original design. We are not just fixing this ship, Sarah realized during one late-night work session. We are making it better. The ship that had been worthless to its alien creators was becoming something new, something that combined the best of alien materials with the best of human engineering, something that was greater than the sum of its parts, and the humans working on it were changing too. Marcus had learned to think in ways that went beyond traditional mechanics. Yuki had discovered programming languages that worked with thought, instead of code. Dr. Okafor had found materials that responded to emotion as well as chemistry. Bill, surprisingly, had become the ship's best engineer. His simple, practical approach worked perfectly with systems that had been overcomplicated by their alien designers. You know what the problem was with these Zephyrian folks, he said one day while rerouting power conduits. They thought too much. Sometimes you just gotta try something and see if it works. By the end of the 3rd year, they had a working starship. It looked different from the original Zephyrian vessel. The biometal hull had reshaped itself into more efficient forms. Human additions and modifications were visible everywhere. Control systems showed English labels alongside alien symbols. Sarah stood on the bridge and looked out at the Antarctic landscape through a viewscreen that combined alien display technology with human interface design. In a few days, they would attempt their first flight. Think it will work? Marcus asked. Sarah smiled. The aliens said this ship was worthless. They said we would never understand how it worked. They were wrong about both things. The ship was no longer Zephyrian. It was no longer completely human either. It had become something new, something that represented the best of both species, something unstoppable. The ship Sarah's team had rebuilt lifted off from Antarctica on a Tuesday morning. They had named it Terra's Vengeance, and it rose from the ice like a silver bird awakening from a long sleep. Marcus sat at the pilot's controls, his hands shaking, slightly. Fusion engines are running smooth, he reported. Biometal hull is responding to atmospheric changes. Structural integrity holding, Dr. Okafor added from the engineering station. The hull is actually getting stronger as we climb. Sarah watched the Earth fall away beneath them through the view screen. 5 years of work had led to this moment. 5 years of taking something the aliens had abandoned and turning it into something incredible. How does she feel? Bill asked, from his position at the weapons console. The old man had surprised everyone by becoming their best gunner. Like she was born to fly, Marcus replied. They spent a week in Earth orbit testing every system. The fusion drives worked perfectly, giving them power and speed that matched the original exotic matter engines. The kinetic railguns fired with precision that amazed even their creators. But it was the biometal hull that truly impressed them. It adapted to the vacuum of space by becoming denser and stronger. When they tested it against small debris, it simply absorbed the impacts and healed itself instantly. This is not the same ship that crashed 5 years ago, Sarah said during their daily briefing. We have created something new. Yuki looked up from her computer systems. The ship's AI is learning from us every day. It thinks like we think now. It wants what we want. And what do we want? Dr. Okafor asked. To explore, to discover, to prove that humans belong among the stars. Their first real test came 2 weeks later. Long-range sensors detected a ship approaching Earth from deep space. It was not human. Zephyrian design. Yuki confirmed, reading the sensor data. Small patrol vessel. They must have detected our fusion signature. Sarah made the decision quickly. Intercept course, let's see what they want. The alien ship was sleek and graceful, built with the same biometal technology as Terra's Vengeance. But it looked different somehow, less alive, more rigid. Unknown vessel, came a transmission in accented English. You are operating stolen Zephyrian technology. Prepare to be boarded. Sarah recognized the voice. She had studied the crash site, recordings for years. Commander Thex 9, she replied. This is Captain Sarah Chen of Terra's Vengeance. The technology was not stolen. It was abandoned. Impossible. Primitive species cannot operate biometal systems. Would you like a demonstration? The Zephyrian patrol ship moved closer, its weapons powering up. Sarah could see it through the view screen now, elegant and deadly. Fire a warning shot, she ordered. Bill's hands moved over his controls. The kinetic railgun fired a single projectile that streaked past the alien ship's hull. But this was not an ordinary projectile. The biometal slug adjusted its course twice during flight, showing the Zephyrians that it could have hit them anywhere. What? How did you do that? Thex 9's voice was different now, confused, maybe a little frightened. Human engineering, Sarah replied. We improved your design. Improved. Impossible. Zephyrian technology represents the pinnacle of... He was cut off as his own ship suddenly shuddered. Warning lights flashed on his bridge. What is happening? He demanded of his crew. Sir, our biometal hull is responding to the other ship. It is trying to adapt to match their configurations. Thex 9 stared at his instruments in shock. The hull of his ship was changing, trying to copy the improvements it sensed in Terra's Vengeance. But his ship's systems were not designed for such changes. Conduits overloaded, power systems failed. How is this possible? He whispered. Sarah's voice came through the communication system, calm and patient. Your biometal was designed to adapt to atmospheric conditions. Ours has learned to adapt to anything, including other biometal ships. You are forcing our hull to malfunction. No, Commander. Your hull is trying to upgrade itself. But your other systems can't handle the improvements. Thex 9 looked around his bridge. Half his control panels were sparking. His weapons were offline. His engines were running at barely 10% power. Meanwhile, Terra's Vengeance hung in space like a predator, completely unaffected. Its biometal hull rippled with patterns of light that seemed almost playful. This is impossible, Thex 9 said again. You are a primitive species. You have not even achieved faster-than-light travel. You're right, Sarah agreed. We haven't figured out how to travel faster than light yet, but we have figured out how to take your abandoned technology and make it better. Dr. Okafor's voice came over the intercom from engineering. Captain, I'm reading massive improvements in our hull integrity. It's like the ship is learning from this encounter. Marcus added from the pilot station, engines are running smoother than ever. Whatever this interaction is doing, it's making us stronger. Sarah turned back to the communication system. Commander Thex 9, your ship needs repairs. We'll escort you to a safe distance from Earth, but then you need to leave. You cannot order us to leave. This is Zephyrian space. Actually, Yuki interrupted, checking her star charts. This is Earth space, Sol system, human territory. You're the visitors. Here. The Zephyrian ship limped away from Earth 3 hours later, its crew in shock. Thex 9 sent a message to Zephyrian Command as soon as he was clear of the system. Priority transmission to Fleet Command. Request immediate analysis. The primitive species has not only activated our abandoned vessel, but has somehow improved it beyond original specifications. Their biometal technology is now superior to ours. Recommend immediate strategic assessment. Back on Terra's Vengeance, the human crew was celebrating their first victory, but Sarah was already thinking ahead. This won't be the last time, she told her team. They'll be back, and they'll bring friends. Let them come, Bill said. patting his weapons console. "This old girl is just getting warmed up." Dr. Okafor ran her hands over a section of the wall, and the biometal responded by showing her internal status displays. The ship is definitely learning from that encounter. It's analyzing the Zephyrian vessel's weaknesses and adapting our systems to exploit them. "Is that good or bad?" Marcus asked. "It's evolution," Sarah replied. "The ship is becoming something that can survive in a universe where the Zephyrians don't want us to exist." Yuki had been monitoring communications from the departing alien ship. "Captain, I'm picking up their transmission to their command. They're scared, really scared." "Good," Sarah said firmly. "Fear makes people make mistakes, and we need every advantage we can get." She looked out at the stars through the view screen. Somewhere out there was the Zephyrian Empire, a civilization that had conquered dozens of worlds and considered humans to be primitives barely worth noticing. But they had made one crucial error. They had underestimated human stubbornness. They had abandoned their ship because they thought it was worthless. They had never considered that humans might take that worthless ship and turn it into something that could challenge their entire empire. "Set course for the outer system," she ordered. "We need to run more tests, check all our systems, and we need to start thinking about what comes next." "What comes next?" Marcus asked. Sarah smiled grimly. "The Zephyrians threw away their ship because they thought we were too primitive to use it. Now we're going to show them just how wrong they were." Terra's Vengeance turned away from Earth and headed toward the outer planets, its biometal hull already beginning to design new configurations based on what it had learned from the encounter. The ship that had been abandoned as worthless was becoming something the galaxy had never seen before. A fusion of alien technology and human determination that grew stronger with every challenge. And this was only the beginning. Word traveled fast through Zephyrian space. Commander Thex 9's report reached the Imperial fleet within days, and the response was immediate disbelief. "Impossible," declared Admiral Vex 2, commander of the 3rd Battle Group. "Primitive species cannot improve our technology. They barely understand fire." But more reports kept coming in. Zephyrian trade vessels reported strange encounters with human ships throughout the outer colonies. Ships that moved like Zephyrian vessels but responded to attacks in ways that made no sense. Captain Zek 8 of the merchant vessel Prophet Seeker filed the most detailed report. The human ship appeared to be constructed from our biometal, but wrong somehow. When we fired a warning shot, their hull absorbed the energy and fired it back at us twice as strong. When we tried to ram them, their ship just pushed us away without taking any damage. It was like fighting smoke that could hit back. Meanwhile, on Terra's Vengeance, Sarah Chen had been promoted to Admiral of Earth's 1st Interstellar Fleet. The title was mostly honorary since she only had one ship, but that was changing quickly. "How many vessels have we found now?" she asked. During the morning briefing, Marcus consulted his tablet. 17 Zephyrian ships abandoned in various systems over the past century. Most of them crash-landed or were scuttled after mechanical failures. Dr. Okafor nodded enthusiastically. "The biometal hull on Terra's Vengeance is sending out some kind of signal. It's waking up dormant biometal on the abandoned ships, making it responsive again. And we have teams ready to retrofit them?" Sarah asked. "More than ready," Yuki replied. "Engineers from 12 different countries. Each team has its own approach to the modifications." Sarah smiled. That was the beautiful thing about humanity. Where the Zephyrians had one way of doing things, the proper way, the official way, humans had dozens of different approaches to every problem. The Jamaican team led by Dr. Robert Marley had taken a crashed Zephyrian frigate and somehow made its biometal hull resonate with sound waves. Their ship, Freedom Fighter, could become nearly invisible to sensors by matching the background noise of space itself. The Russian engineering team, working on a vessel they called Red Storm, had focused on redundancy. Every system had backups. Every backup had backups. Their ship was ugly compared to the flowing lines of original Zephyrian design, but it was nearly indestructible. The Japanese team had taken the opposite approach. Their ship, Harmony, was beautiful beyond description. The biometal hull formed intricate patterns that seemed to move and dance, but the patterns were not just decorative, They channeled energy more efficiently than any Zephyrian engineer had ever managed. Each ship is unique, Dr. Okafor explained to Sarah as they reviewed the progress reports. The biometal is adapting to the personality and culture of each engineering team. It is like the ships are becoming extensions of their crews. Sarah nodded. This was exactly what she had hoped for. The Zephyrians built their ships to rigid specifications. Every vessel was identical to every other vessel of its class, but human ships were becoming as diverse as the people who built them. The breakthrough came when they attempted to coordinate multiple ships in a single operation. 3 human-modified vessels, Terra's Vengeance, Freedom Fighter, and Red Storm, were conducting exercises near Jupiter when they encountered a Zephyrian patrol squadron. Unknown vessels, the Zephyrian commander transmitted. You are operating in restricted space. Withdraw immediately or face destruction. Sarah, commanding. The small fleet from Terra's Vengeance replied calmly. This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Earth Defense Force. Sol system is human territory. You are the ones who need to withdraw. Primitive species do not have territorial claims. Prepare to be destroyed. The Zephyrian squadron consisted of 4 ships, each larger and more heavily armed than any of the human vessels. They moved in perfect formation, their weapons charging in unison, but when they opened fire, something unexpected happened. Dr. Marley's Freedom Fighter suddenly vanished, from all sensors becoming completely invisible. The Zephyrian weapons fired at empty space while the human ship moved to flank them. Captain Volkov's Red Storm took the full force of the Zephyrian attack and simply absorbed it. The Russian-built redundant systems distributed the damage across so many backup systems that the ship barely noticed the hits. Terra's Vengeance did something that made the Zephyrian commander gasp in shock. Its biometal hull began to ripple and flow, forming new weapon ports that had not existed moments before. Kinetic projectiles fired from guns that grew out of the ship's skin like flowers blooming. What are they doing? The Zephyrian weapons officer screamed. Their ships are changing shape. Impossible, the commander replied, but he was watching his own instruments in horror. The human ships were not just fighting back, they were adapting to the battle in real time. Freedom Fighter reappeared behind the Zephyrian formation and fired a single shot that somehow passed through the lead ship's shields without triggering them. The projectile was vibrating at exactly the right frequency to match the shield's harmonics. Red Storm launched what looked like a suicide ram, but at the last moment split into 3 separate sections. Each section struck a different Zephyrian ship while the main hull reformed itself and continued fighting. Terra's Vengeance simply reached out with tendrils of biometal that stretched through space like liquid silver arms. The tendrils wrapped around a Zephyrian vessel and began to squeeze. Sir, the Zephyrian weapons officer reported. The biometal is interfacing with our hull. It's trying to reprogram our ship. The commander watched in terror as his own vessels, biometal, began to respond to the human ship's commands. Control panels switched to displaying human symbols. The ship's AI began speaking English. Surrender now and your crew will not be harmed. Sarah's voice came through their communication system, but it was being generated by their own ships. Computers, retreat, the commander ordered. Full retreat. The Zephyrian squadron fled the system, leaving the 3 human ships floating in space surrounded by the wreckage of their own discarded weapon projectiles. Well, Dr. Marley said over the fleet communication channel, that was interesting. Captain Volkov's gruff voice added, Russian engineering is best engineering. Ship took no damage. Japanese efficiency provided optimal energy distribution, came the polite voice of Captain Tanaka from Harmony, which had just arrived as backup. Sarah looked around at her small fleet. 4 ships, each one unique, each one representing a different aspect of human ingenuity, and each one had just defeated a superior Zephyrian force through pure creativity. Send a message to Earth, she ordered Yuki. Tell them we need more ships, and more engineers, from every country, every culture. The more different approaches we have, the stronger we become. But the victory had larger consequences. Within days, every Zephyrian outpost in the region was buzzing with reports of the battle. The humans had not just won, They had done things with biometal technology that Zephyrian scientists had declared impossible. Emperor Zex Prime himself reviewed the battle reports from his throne room on the Zephyrian homeworld. He was an ancient being, ruler of an empire that spanned 40 star systems. "These humans," he said to his advisors, "they are using our own technology against us." "Yes, my lord," replied Science Minister Tex 1, "but they are using it wrong. Their modifications violate every principle of proper biometal engineering, and yet they are winning. It is just luck, my lord. Random chance. Their crude modifications cannot stand against properly designed Zephyrian vessels." But Emperor Zex Prime had not ruled an empire for 3 centuries by ignoring inconvenient facts. The humans were not just lucky. They were doing something fundamentally different with biometal technology. "Mobilize the 3rd and 7th fleets," he ordered. "These humans have corrupted our technology. We will cleanse it from the galaxy." His advisors bowed low. "Yes, my lord." "How many ships?" "All of them. Every vessel we can spare. This contamination ends now." Meanwhile, in the Sol system, Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of Terra's Vengeance and watched as more human-modified ships arrived each day. Engineers from every continent were working around the clock, taking abandoned Zephyrian hulks and turning them into vessels that represented the best of human creativity. Each ship was different. Each ship was unique. And each ship was becoming more powerful as the biometal learned from its human crews. The Zephyrians had built an empire based on uniformity and control, but humans thrived on diversity and chaos. And now that chaos was about to meet order in a battle that would determine the future of both species. "How many ships do we have now?" Sarah asked. 47 operational vessels, Marcus reported, with more coming online every day. Sarah nodded. It would have to be enough, because according to their long-range sensors, the largest Zephyrian fleet in history was heading toward Earth. The war was about to begin. The Zephyrian Imperial fleet arrived at the edge of the Sol system like a storm made of metal and light. 300 ships moved in perfect formation, their biometal hulls gleaming with deadly purpose. Emperor Zex Prime commanded the fleet. From his flagship, the Eternal Dominance, a massive dreadnought that carried enough firepower to destroy planets, he had come personally to witness the destruction of the human contamination. Long-range sensors show 47 human vessels, reported Fleet Admiral Kex 5. They are scattered throughout the system in no recognizable formation. "Primitives," the Emperor said with disgust. "They do not even understand basic military tactics." But Sarah Chen, watching the approaching fleet from the bridge of Terra's Vengeance, understood tactics better than the Emperor realized. The human ships were not scattered randomly. They were positioned to take advantage of something the Zephyrians had never learned to use, the chaos of individual creativity. "All ships, this is Admiral Chen," she broadcast to the human fleet. "Remember, we are not trying to match them ship for ship. We are showing them what happens when rigid thinking meets human adaptability." The first engagement began near Mars. A squadron of Zephyrian cruisers encountered Dr. Patel's ship, Mumbai's Pride, which had been modified by Indian engineers who specialized in making things work with whatever materials were available. The Zephyrians fired their quantum weapons in perfect synchronization, exactly as their training manuals specified, but Mumbai's Pride simply absorbed the energy and used it to power systems that should not have been possible. "Sir," the Zephyrian squadron leader reported to the flagship, "the human vessel is converting our weapon energy into some kind of music." It was true. Dr. Patel's team had discovered that biometal could resonate with sound frequencies. Mumbai's Pride was singing, and the song was somehow disrupting Zephyrian targeting systems across a dozen nearby ships. At the same time, Captain O'Brien's ship, Celtic Thunder, was demonstrating what Irish engineers could do with alien technology. They had modified their biometal to respond to the crew's emotions. When the ship was under attack, the entire crew would start telling jokes and singing drinking songs. The happier they got, the stronger their ship became. "This is impossible," Emperor Zex Prime declared as he watched the battle reports. "How can emotion affect biometal performance?" His science minister had no answer. Zephyrian scientists had never considered that biometal might respond to feelings. Their culture valued logic and control above all else. The battle spread throughout the solar system. Near Jupiter, Captain Volkov's Red Storm engaged an entire Zephyrian battle group by itself. Every time the aliens destroyed one of the ship's systems, 2 new ones would grow to replace it. The Russian redundancy engineering had turned the vessel into something that became stronger the more damage it took. "It is regenerating faster than we can destroy it," reported the Zephyrian battle group commander. "Then destroy it faster," Emperor Zex Prime ordered. But the humans were not fighting the way the Zephyrians expected. Traditional space battles were about formations and firepower. Human battles were about creativity and adaptation. Dr. Tanaka's Harmony had discovered that its biometal could form temporary connections with other human ships. During the battle, 5 different vessels suddenly linked together with streams of living metal, becoming a single massive ship with 5 different engineering philosophies working in perfect cooperation. The Zephyrians had no tactics for fighting. A ship that could split into 5 pieces or combine into one depending on the situation. Meanwhile, Terra's vengeance was demonstrating abilities that made Emperor Zex Prime question everything he knew about biometal technology. The ship was not just adapting to the battle, it was predicting what the Zephyrians would do next. "How is this possible?" he demanded as his tactical officers reported yet another impossible human maneuver. Sarah Chen's voice came through the communication system, broadcast on all Zephyrian frequencies. "Your biometal was designed to adapt to atmospheric conditions. Emperor, ours has learned to adapt to thoughts, emotions, and intentions. We are not fighting your ships. We are fighting your predictability." Terra's vengeance demonstrated this by suddenly appearing behind the eternal dominance, even though it had been on the other side of the solar system moments before. "Sir," the Emperor's sensor officer reported, "their ship somehow used Jupiter's gravity well to fold space around itself. That technique is not in any of our databases." "Because we just invented it," Marcus Rodriguez said over the open channel. "That is what humans do. We try things that have never been done before." But the real shock came when Emperor Zex Prime activated his ultimate weapon. The Eternal Dominance carried a planet killer, a device that created controlled black holes to destroy entire worlds. The weapon fired and space itself began to tear apart near Earth. For a moment, it looked like the humans had finally encountered something they could not adapt to. The black hole weapon was beyond any technology they had ever seen. Then something incredible happened. Every human ship in the system suddenly linked together with streams of biometal that stretched across millions of miles of space. 47 different vessels representing dozens of different cultures and engineering philosophies became a single organism. The combined biometal network did not try to stop the black hole weapon. Instead, it redirected it, using the artificial gravity well as a slingshot to accelerate a stream of kinetic projectiles to incredible speeds. The projectiles were not aimed at the Zephyrian ships. They were aimed at empty space around the fleet. But when they hit, they created a web of gravitational distortions that trapped the entire Imperial fleet in a cage made of twisted space-time. "Impossible," Emperor Zex Prime whispered. "No," Sarah Chen replied, her voice coming from every speaker on every Zephyrian ship as the human biometal network interfaced with alien systems. "Just unprecedented. There is a difference. The human fleet could have destroyed the trapped Zephyrians easily, but instead they did something the aliens had never expected. They stopped fighting." "Emperor Zex Prime," Sarah said, "your fleet is disabled. Your weapons are offline. You cannot escape the gravitational cage, but we are not going to destroy you." "Why not?" the Emperor asked. "Because that is not who we are. Humans fight when we have to, but we prefer to build rather than destroy." The biometal streams connecting the human ships began to change, forming complex patterns that looked almost like artwork. But the patterns had a purpose. They were slowly adjusting the gravitational cage to make it more comfortable for the trapped Zephyrians. "What do you want?" Emperor Zex Prime asked. "We want you to understand something," Sarah replied. "You called your ship worthless and abandoned it on our world. You thought we were too primitive to use your technology, but you were wrong about both things." She paused, and when she continued, her voice was gentler. "We did not steal your technology, Emperor. We adopted it. We gave it a new home, new purposes, new possibilities. Your biometal is not corrupted by human modifications. It is liberated by them." Dr. Okafor's voice joined the broadcast from her engineering station. "Biometal was meant to adapt and grow, but your rigid thinking limited its potential. When you gave it to humans, you gave it the freedom to become what it was always meant to be." The Emperor looked around his bridge. His own biometal walls were displaying patterns now, beautiful swirls of color that seemed to pulse with life. "What are you doing to our ships?" he asked. "Nothing," Yuki Tanaka replied from her position on Terra's Vengeance. "Your biometal is finally seeing what it could become if you stopped trying to control it so tightly." Throughout the Zephyrian fleet, crews were witnessing the same thing. Their ships were coming alive in ways they had never imagined. Control panels were reshaping themselves to be more efficient. Hull sections were optimizing their configurations for better performance. "This is what happens when biometal is free to grow," Bill Crawford said in his gravelly voice. "It becomes something better." Emperor Zex Prime was silent for a long moment. Then slowly he began to understand. "You are not trying to conquer us," he said. "We are not trying to conquer anyone," Sarah confirmed. "We are trying to show you that your technology can be more than you ever dreamed, and so can you." The gravitational cage slowly dissolved, freeing the Zephyrian fleet. The ships could have resumed fighting, but they did not. Their crews were too busy watching their vessels transform and improve in real time. "How?" the Emperor asked. "By letting go of the need to control everything perfectly," Sarah replied. "By accepting that sometimes the best solutions come from trying things that should not work. By understanding that diversity makes us stronger, not weaker." The human biometal network began to disconnect, but slowly, gently. As it did, streams of living metal from the human ships reached out to touch the Zephyrian vessels, not to control them, but to share with them. "We are giving you a gift," Dr. Okafor explained. "Your biometal will remember this experience. It will remember what it feels like to be free. You can choose to embrace that freedom, or you can choose to return to your old ways. But the choice will always be there." Emperor Zex Prime felt his flagship around him, alive and eager in ways it had never been before. The eternal dominance was no longer just a